My name is Evelyn, and until that night I believed my life was simple, predictable, and safe. 15 years of marriage, one beautiful daughter, and a home that had always felt like a fortress against the chaos of the world. But all it took was one late-night phone call to shatter that illusion. It was past midnight when I woke to the sound of my husband's voice. At first I thought he was talking in his sleep, but then I realized he was downstairs, speaking softly on the phone. I crept to the top of the stairs, my bare feet silent on the wooden floor. The light from the living room spilled into the hallway, and his shadow moved across the wall. I couldn't make out every word, but the tone was unmistakable, nervous, urgent. And then I heard the phrase that made my heart stop. She can't find out. She must never know. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Who was he talking about? Me? Our daughter? Or someone else entirely? I pressed my hand over my mouth, terrified that even the sound of my breathing would betray me. My mind raced, tumbling through possibilities I didn't want to consider. He wasn't the kind of man to lie, at least I thought he wasn't. He wasn't the kind of man to keep secrets. But the way he lowered his voice, the way he checked over his shoulder before hanging up the phone, it was the behavior of a stranger, not the man I had built a life with. I slipped back into bed before he came upstairs, but there was no sleep left in me. I stared at the ceiling, listening to the faint creaks of the house, wondering what I had just witnessed. When he finally slid under the covers beside me, his breathing steady and calm, I almost hated him for it. How could he sleep so easily while my entire world had just tilted on its axis? That night marked the first crack in the glass of my marriage. And once I saw it, I couldn't unsee it. I knew I would have to dig deeper no matter how much the truth might hurt. Because a secret spoken in the dark has a way of demanding the light. The morning after that phone call, I moved through the house like a ghost. My husband, Daniel, acted as though nothing had happened. He kissed me on the cheek, poured his coffee, and left for work without the slightest trace of guilt on his face. That almost frightened me more than the call itself. He was too calm, too rehearsed. I tried to convince myself that maybe I had misunderstood, that exhaustion had twisted his words in my head. But the memory was too clear, etched into me like a scar. She must never know. Later that afternoon, while cleaning Daniel's office, I stumbled across something that made my blood run cold. Among stacks of paperwork and old bills was a black leather notebook. At first glance, it looked like nothing more than his work journal. But when I opened it, I realized it was something far more personal. It wasn't filled with meeting notes or financial plans. It was a diary. His handwriting was uneven, rushed, as if written in stolen moments. And the words on those pages felt like knives cutting into me. When I'm with her, I feel alive again. Evelyn can't know. She doesn't need to know. She wouldn't understand. My hands trembled as I flipped through more pages. Each entry was the same, his thoughts consumed by her. No name, just vague descriptions, her smile, her voice, the way she listens. Whoever she was, she wasn't me. I sank into his chair, the diary heavy in my lap. 15 years of marriage flashed before my eyes. Holidays, anniversaries, the birth of our daughter. Were they all a lie? Had he been living in two worlds all this time, one with me and one with her? When I heard the garage door open later that evening, I quickly shoved the diary back into its place. My chest pounded as he walked in, carrying groceries, humming softly like he didn't have a care in the world. I forced a smile, pretended everything was normal, but inside I was unraveling. That night, I lay awake beside him, staring at the shadows on the ceiling. Every breath he took was steady, confident. Mine were shallow, uneven, poisoned by doubt. I knew one thing for certain. Whoever she was, I had to find out. Because the truth was no longer just a suspicion. It was written in his own hand. From that day on, every movement Daniel made carried a different weight. When he said he was staying late at the office, I no longer believed him. When he smiled across the dinner table, I wondered what, or who, he was really thinking about. The world I had trusted so blindly was beginning to crack open, and I couldn't look away. I became an observer in my own marriage. I watched the way he checked his phone too often, shielding the screen from me. I noticed how he showered the moment he came home, as if washing away some trace of where he had been. He didn't change his routine drastically. If anything, it was the little things that betrayed him. The nervous glance, the hesitation before answering, the way his hand lingered on his pocket when his phone buzzed. One evening, while folding laundry in our bedroom, I heard his phone vibrate on the nightstand. Daniel was in the shower, so I reached for it without thinking. My hand shook as I unlocked it. I knew his passcode, though I had never used it before. The message on the screen wasn't from a woman but from an unknown number. It read simply, "She looks so much like you." My throat tightened. Against my better judgment, I opened the conversation. My heart pounded as I scrolled upward, reading fragments of their exchanges, plans, half-hidden affection, veiled references to someone else. And then I saw it, a photograph. A girl no older than 12, smiling at the camera. She had long dark hair and wide brown eyes that burned themselves into my memory. For a moment I couldn't breathe, but she looked familiar. Too familiar. He looked like Daniel. She looked like my daughter. The room spun around me. Could it be possible? Could my husband have another child? A secret family he had been hiding all these years? The thought was unthinkable, yet the photo was undeniable. When he came out of the bathroom, towels slung over his shoulders, I forced myself to close the phone and put it back before he noticed. My chest was on fire, but I kept my face calm. He kissed me lightly, thanking me for setting out his clothes, and I smiled back like nothing had happened. But inside, everything had changed. I now carried the image of that girl with me like a ghost, haunting every thought, every glance at my own daughter. And one terrifying question echoed in my mind. If Daniel could hide a child from me, what else was he capable of hiding? I could no longer live in silence. The photograph of that girl burned inside me like a secret flame, and every time Daniel smiled at me, it felt like a betrayal. My mind screamed for answers, and my body carried the weight of suspicion with every breath. For days I rehearsed what I would say, how I would confront him. But when the moment came, my words weren't rehearsed at all. They spilled out like water breaking through a dam. It happened on a quiet Sunday afternoon. Daniel was sitting in his office, typing at his computer, when I walked in with the black diary in my hands. He looked up, startled, and his eyes darkened the moment he saw what I was holding. "I found this," I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. "And I know about the girl." The room went silent. He didn't speak, didn't deny it immediately, which told me more than any words could. His shoulders slumped, and for the first time in our marriage, Daniel looked small, defeated. Finally, he whispered, "I was going to tell you. One day." The sound of his voice cracked something in me. "One day. 15 years, Daniel. 15 years, and you let me build a life with you while you kept this buried." Tears welled in his eyes, but I wasn't ready to forgive them. He admitted the truth then, his voice shaking. Years ago, before our wedding, he had an affair with another woman. It ended, but she had been pregnant. He didn't know for certain at first, and by the time he did, the child was already born. He swore that he supported them financially, but nothing more, that it was in the past. But how could it be the past when a living, breathing child existed? A child that looked so much like him? A child who looked like us? I stood there, gripping the diary so tightly my knuckles turned white. The walls of our home felt like they were closing in. My heart ached not only from the betrayal but from the enormity of the lie. Our daughter had a half-sister she had never known about. I had been raising my family in ignorance while he carried this secret life. He reached for me, his voice breaking. "Evelyn, please. It was a mistake. But I love you. I've only ever loved you." But his words couldn't erase the image of that little girl. They couldn't erase the fact that another family existed in the shadows of our marriage. And for the first time, I wasn't sure if love was enough to hold us together. The days after Daniel's confession felt like walking through a dream I couldn't wake from. Our house looked the same. The family photos on the wall, the smell of coffee in the mornings, the sound of our daughter's laughter echoing down the hallway. But everything beneath that surface had changed. I found myself staring at Daniel across the dinner table, wondering who he really was. How could a man share a life with me, raise a child with me, and still carry another secret family in the shadows? Every moment together felt hollow, a stage play where we both recited lines we no longer believed. At night, when he reached for me, I turned away. My body couldn't lie the way my mouth tried to. I thought about the girl constantly, the daughter he had hidden, the sister my own child didn't know she had. Was it fair to Daniel's other child to continue living as if she didn't exist? Was it fair to my daughter, who was growing up in a home built on deception? The more I thought about it, the more I realized there was no version of this story where I could pretend everything was fine. The truth had already been spoken, and once the truth is out, it stains everything it touches. One evening, after our daughter had gone to bed, I sat across from Daniel in the living room. His face was drawn, his eyes tired, as if he too had aged 10 years in just a week. I told him I couldn't carry his secret for him. That the life we built had been broken by his silence, not by the affair itself, but by the years of lies layered on top of it. "I don't know if I can ever trust you again," I whispered, my voice shaking. Daniel reached for my hand, desperate, his voice heavy with regret. "I'll do anything, Evelyn. Just don't walk away." But deep down I knew I already had. Something inside me had broken and no apology could fix it. Love could survive many things, distance, pain, even betrayal, but it couldn't survive lies that span decades. I looked at him one last time, and for the first time since our wedding I felt like I was staring at a stranger. The next morning I packed a small bag. Not for forever, not yet. But for long enough to breathe, to think, to decide whether the life I had been living was truly mine, or just a role I had been forced to play. As I closed the door behind me, the weight of the house lifted from my chest. For the first time in years, the future was uncertain, terrifying, and somehow mine to decide.